calling all Clojure beginners. The Clouncil is a fun and friendly live call-in show for people starting off on their journey with Clojure to ask experienced Clojurians questions and work out problems together. Why do we do this? Well, we want to help you get unstuck. Are you baffled, befuddled, flustered, flummoxed? Having trouble telling your left parentheses from your right? Your conj from your cons? Well, every other Wednesday, we are here to help you out. Who's here to help you out? The Clouncil core team consists of 5 developers. Myself, Jordan Miller, aka Lambda, as a Chief Lambda Officer. Friend Paula Giron, the Graph Whisperer. Another friend, Mike Fikes, who's known to be a self-hosted compiler. Arne Bressor, head of transducing, and of course, our captain of this ship and inspiration for this project, Daniel Higginbotham. If you follow the QR code on the screen, or you just navigate to theclouncil.com, you too can give us a question to answer and work through. We will also have a myriad of guests and surprise people joining us. Can't wait to see you there.
Welcome to the Clouncil, a call-in show for noobs, newbies, and novices on the path to becoming Clojure pros. We want to hear from you. Pass us your problems, throw us your code, tell us what has you stumped and befuddled, and we'll make sure to sort it out. Can't tell your left parenthesis from your right, your conj from your cons. Is a higher order function a potluck for cultists? Have no fear. We'll take you from associative math, reducing the ecosystem to exactly the bits you need to know. I'm your host, Counselor Daniel, and I'm joined today by Counselor Jordan, known far and wide for her rich hickey fan fiction. Counselor Arne, who's affectionately referred to as a lazy random sequence. Counselor Paula, who once stepped in the same river twice. And Counselor Mike, who's joining us from inside a REPL. Hold on to your REPLs because the Clouncil is in session. And to get us started today, we'd actually like to start by checking in with y'all and see how you're feeling about the show and ask if there's anything that you'd like to see from us. So I know we have a lot of familiar faces and I think also a couple of newer faces.
Since it's still a pretty small group, maybe we can actually, just do the rounds.
No pressure though. There's
no pressure.
So much pressure.
You can always just say pass if you like.
Let's start with Mr. Mike Nardell. He's been like a consistent.
Yeah, long-time listener.
Oh yeah.
No, this is great. This has been great. I'm in an area where I know one other Clojure programmer. I work for a university, so that I sat in on a functional programming class about a year ago, which was pretty great. It was kind of nice, walk through the Lambda calculus, but the programming was in Haskell. So one thing that actually really blew me away about Haskell in the negative was I was surprised that you have nothing like a REPL experience you have a pretty weak REPL experience in Haskell. So I remain really committed to that interactive programming that Clojure promotes. Clojure, when I say Clojure here, but definitely interested. And I'm again, I don't have a whole lot of opportunities to apply Clojure in my professional work, but it's definitely affected the way I think about programming and data. And I'll pass it on to, I guess, I'll just pick someone at random and they can pass, but I'll pick Sunny because Sunny came up next in the queue of people.
We're just introducing ourselves?
Yeah, whatever. If you have any feedback about the show, or if this is your first, then you wouldn't have none, right?
Right. This is my first time here, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've actually never worked professionally as a software engineer yet, but I've been a student in an online school for the fundamentals called Launch School. They don't teach anything related to functional programming or Clojure, but like through the process of discovering these things, I've really seen the value in them. So I'm really hoping to, once I finish school, which should be pretty soon, to get some professional work in Clojure.
Cool.
Gotcha. Awesome. Is there anything that you'd like to see us cover here on the show?
Am I the new one here? Because I did have a thing that I wanted to ask about, but I'm open to hearing other things first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, yeah. So yeah, we'll get feedback from folks, but definitely ask your question, and yeah, we'd love to tackle it.
Okay. So moving from more of an object-oriented approach to things, because I have several ideas for some programs that I would like to develop, and I'm trying to figure out how to approach them from a more functional perspective. Like with the different modules in the application, the elements in them that I would like to be able to configure, like settings and things, my original thought was to put them all in a separate file and then to have it reference that file. But that's sort of like there's a coupling there that I'd like to kind of avoid, and I'm not sure how to do that yet. Maybe to have like an individual part in the individual module that could just read all the things from somewhere else if it needs to. And I'm not sure I'm explaining this very well, but do you understand the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Like how to be able to incorporate data from other places without requiring that solid coupling.
Gotcha. This is a good one. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for the question, and thanks for being here. Excited to have you here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Would you like to pass it to another person in the audience who can?
I don't know who is new and who is not.
Doesn't matter.
I don't know.
It's crucial.
Let me ask. I could ask Wendy, and again, feel free to decline. Be like, no thanks. But Wendy, any thoughts?
Sure,
anything
hi.
that you're looking to? Hey, hello.
Hi. I'm new to Clojure, new to programming, so this is all pretty new and all that for me. So I don't have any specific questions on what I'd like to see or particular questions help with, because I feel like I just need to work on stuff by myself. But once and here's Robert Randolph peeking his head in, my husband.
I'm wearing a Robert Randolph t-shirt, by the way.
That's random.
Oh, he's wearing a Randolph t-shirt in the family band.
It's a fan
What
club
shirt
here.
are you wearing today, man?
The second one.
I made him a base brand.
Nice.
This is the first time. That I'm joining for a whole meetup of the Clouncil, so I'm excited about that. I really enjoyed. I've been trying to catch up with the episodes and just like listening to you all, and I don't have anything specific besides just know that I'm really new. So yeah.
Well, it's so exciting. So exciting that you're here. Yeah, cool. Well, we'll go ahead and just like fresh, new to programming, even Clojure as your first language. So yeah, really hope it will be a good resource for you. I'll go ahead and pass it to Christiana, if that's okay.
Hello, I'm also really new to Clojure. I recently started my first job after graduation 4 months ago, and we use Clojure a lot. But till now, I haven't had like a real chance to practice Clojure in a professional way. So I'm still learning with Clojure for the brave and true, and Daniel has been a great resource so far. So I think I'm getting better at it every day.
Hey, yeah, it's awesome to see you here. Yeah, so Christiana and I have been working together, actually at work.
Oh, okay.
And it's just, yeah. And it's just like, she's just delightful to work with. And I guess I was wondering, Christiana, are there any like particular like subjects or topics where you feel uncertain about Clojure that like it would be good for us to cover at some point?
I think right now I'm trying to get better with threading. It just kind of takes me a little while to, figure out how the whole thing works in a more
Oh,
complicated examples, typically.
Oh, it took me like a year to
Are
like
you-
even threading. I'm like,
Well, are we talking about like
Yeah.
multi-threaded applications, or are we talking about threading macros?
Threading macros.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood you.
Ah.
I got you. Okay, threading macros. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it'd be good to walk through that.
I have a question. I guess a follow-up question
misunderstood
to your
that, sorry.
question. So are you working in a code base, it sounds like, where there are other, I guess more tenured Clojure developers, where you're experiencing like the requirement to understand threading immediately?
No, actually, just like the examples that I've been looking at work, I get an idea of how I would solve something using threading macros. It's just difficult for me to implement it. Like we're working with the advent of code as a challenge at work, and I really wanted to solve it using threading macros, and I had like the general idea of how that would work, but I didn't know how to implement it, so I went about it another way. And then it was kind of nice to see other people's solution and see that there's the solution using threading macros is much better and much more efficient.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic to dive into and look at some examples maybe later. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Christiana. And see you, well, throughout this and then after at work. All right. Okay. Man, how am I doing as a host? Where am I on the awkward scale of like 0 to 10?
That's what we go for.
Maybe about 7.
Okay.
That's cool.
Awkward
Break
is
it
what
up,
we
break it
aim
up.
for. That's the niche.
Very on brand.
All right. Aditya, am I saying your name right? And
I would say
second,
Aditya. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike is closer.
Yes, I win the.
You win.
Aditya.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
welcome.
thank you. I'm just lurking mostly. And
Are you
like
in
I
a hammock?
mentioned, yeah, it is.
Oh.
That's
I'm
so
rich,
Clojure.
So cool.
So that's why I typed in chat, for like the relative newcomers, it's important to explain the importance of hammocks in the Clojure community.
Yes, do that.
That's how we code.
Wait, are you gonna explain it? Who's gonna explain it?
Who's
We'll
gonna
write that
explain?
down as a topic.
Oh my God.
It's a very deep, profound topic that is
Yeah.
absolutely, it's a very important topic.
Which we will
Does anyone
cover
know
at
what it
some
is?
point. Add it to the list of things to cover.
I think you should sleep on this topic and you'll understand it.
Yeah,
But
There you go.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to give a TLDR. I would be so confused if I didn't know what was up right now. And
Like, why are they worried about a hammock? What's that?
okay.
Yeah.
So Rich Hickey,
Okay,
the creator of Clojure, gave this talk called hammock driven development that and we will go into later what that means, but that's the whole hammock reference is hammock driven development, and it means just taking some time to think about your code, think then code, but in a hammock, because the whole point is like it's just comfortable enough where you can relax, but not that you can it's not your bed, so you're not gonna fall asleep. We'll elaborate more, but that's the joke.
it's like it's comfortable enough for a book, but not comfortable enough for a laptop.
Yes.
Yeah, there's actually, so there's this academic, her name is Barbara Oakley, I believe, who does she's put up a lot of stuff on learning how to learn, talks about focus mode versus diffuse mode, and how you get you have your shower thoughts, breakthroughs when you're taking a walk or in the shower or something like that. So I guess hammock driven development sounds a little bit better than shower driven development. On the other hand, with shower driven development, you will write clean code.
Yes,
this is true.
Okay, all right, I'm done. I should just leave now. All right.
No, Daniel, can I tell you? You just took my pick for this week. I'm not even kidding. That was my pick. Was learning how to learn. That book was going to be my book.
Oh,
Yeah.
they still
think
can be.
Time.
Well,
They run a course on Coursera, by the way.
yeah, that was like going to be the whole. I
It
talked
can
about
still,
some
it
of
can
this
still be
again.
your pick. Still make it your
Sorry to
pick.
steal your thunder. All right. All right. So Aditya, is that am I saying it? Is
Yes,
that it?
yes. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Cool. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna pass it. Let's pass it to Steph. All right, Steph, if you'd like to join in the fun.
Hey everyone, thanks for taking the time to discuss with us today. It's cool to see Peter Stromberg here as well. I've interacted with him in Clojure in Slack, where I ask many noob questions. But I'm very appreciative of everyone's time and the whole community vibe. It's very welcoming. It's kind of strange being part of a small community like this, because you have access to people that are very experienced and competent, and you being so incompetent, you sort of feel like there's some mismatch there. And well, yeah, we're really lucky to have you guys and girls and everyone in between. So thanks
Don't
very
worry,
much.
some of us who are very experienced are still incompetent.
Yeah.
We're just more experienced in hiding it.
Yeah, no, maybe it's just a frame of mind, the feeling like an imposter. And so, yeah, it's really cool to be part of the community. I've recently gone down the whole Richiki rabbit hole, watched way too many talks at 1.5 speed. I feel like I now can't listen to him speaking at a normal pace. And that doesn't reflect at all on him. It's just the sheer quantity of information that he's put out so freely. I don't know if he's an alien or from the future or whatever here to warn us about state, but we're all converts of his way of thinking about problems. I guess one thing that I'd like to see discussed a little bit more is how you get in the reps. So to go just because there's so many different ways you can do things. There's this combinatorial explosion between the libraries that you could use to solve any given problem. And so I'm curious to see, do you guys just often spin up new projects and run with that? Or how do you approach it? I've been doing that a little bit myself, moving from lining into deps.eden, getting burnt a little bit because there's a little bit of magic. You need to be aware of the magic sometimes, and other times not. So yeah, I'm still learning a little bit, getting the confidence levels up and iterating along as we go. But I'd love to hear more about how you folks get what is it that you do? I've heard Tyler Cowan ask that is akin to a pianist practicing scales. I'd like to sort of understand a bit more around that. Sorry for the monologue.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, we asked for it. So thank you.
Yeah, the equivalent of a pianist getting their scales practice in, what do we kind of do to get our Clojure reps, our Clojure daily practice? That's a really cool question.
Yeah.
Cool. Yes, thank you. So yeah, hopefully we'll get to it today because I like this question. Yeah, so thanks for your feedback. Great to have you here. And we're gonna, I think, so Peter Stromberg has also joined us. And so Peter, what we're doing is we just wanted feedback on like how things are going, how you're feeling about the Clouncil, and if there's anything that you'd like to see covered.
So do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'm just super happy that you're doing this. So that's, I guess, my feedback, and that's is this the 5th time you do it? And it seems to be growing, and people are like aware and still very super happy with the generosity you show. So yeah, but just for me, it's just keep this up. It's super and it makes me super happy that the beginners get this kind of help and this amount of help. It's super.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah. Peter, I do have a question for you. Did you get a haircut?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Yeah, it was very, very long. So yeah,
Yeah,
had to be
that's
cut.
Looks great.
Didn't even recognize when you're like, Peter's joined us. I was like, where? I was like looking around, looking at my settings, like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, well, like looking at the little version, I was like, oh, he tied his hair back, but he didn't.
You look kind of like Johnny Depp.
I was
Very
gonna
cur-
say Tony Stark.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Tony Stark, totally. So I ride.
Clojure
That's
Tony
awesome.
Stark.
I actually sometimes compare the Clojure REPL a bit with when Tony Stark builds his machine and tries it the first time. I mean, he's like one with this suit, this machine.
Yeah,
it is like that's the feeling I get when I really connect with the REPL, that I get like it's like a suiting up with the application I'm building. And also I recognize when he starts the first time he does it, like it's almost dangerous for him. He's just like flying around, can't control it, and you know, and it takes him a while to get in control of it and actually start to utilize it. So yeah, so that's one of my like, I don't know if you can make a metaphor with Iron Man. I think you should. Yeah.
I think if we were going to adopt that metaphor, my own approach would be when he was trying to build those boots with rockets in them, and he tried it out and he immediately slammed into the ceiling. That would be me.
I think we've all been there. Yeah. Well, thanks for the kind words, Peter. And yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Peter is the creator of this project Calva for VS Code. It's a great starting editor for people who are trying to learn Clojure. Can't recommend it enough. So thanks for being here, Peter. And thanks for your feedback. Cool. All right, so I think I think we've had another person join, but I'd like to actually get to answering these questions. And also, I would say like pretty remarkable. We're on like a fair, like, you know, a somewhat sizable Zoom meeting, and like everyone has their camera turned on. Like how sweet is that? But yeah, okay, so I guess I want to pass it to throw to my fellow counselors. Like, you know, we had an idea for a question to answer like at the beginning, but we've gotten all these great questions just now. Yeah. And so where should we begin?
What to do? Yeah.
I want to answer these questions right meow.
Yeah, I'm feeling that way too.
I like them all. I think that the threading macros is maybe it's like the most concrete one, where it's sort of like, you know, but
go for that one.
Okay, let's do it. Christiana, how do you feel about us like kind of pinning you back up here on the Zoom and kind of working through this with you?
Sure.
All right, cool. Okay, all right, so threading macros. Threading macros, a mini workshop. Threading macros in 5 minutes.
Does anyone want to share a REPL, share an editor, or should I do it?
Yeah. I remember when I was new and learning Clojure, I misunderstood them completely, but I'm trying to remember what aspect I misunderstood. And then an epiphany went off in my brain when I think someone else explained to me, it's just syntax. I think I was wanting more out of it than that, and that was confusing.
I think threading macros are most commonly conflated with pipelines, which they are totally not.
That's a good point.
Yes, I think I was getting confused with functions in some way. And once I realized it was just syntax, I like, okay, it's like the magic was gone. There was nothing confusing to me.
Yeah, I remember the breakthrough with threading, because before I was using very Paula remembers, not idiomatic, like, you know, and threading. Like once I started working professionally is when I really saw, like, I started to think in threading, because that's like kind of when you change over, especially that like thread last, map something, filter something, map something, sort, that pattern. I mean, I still even use that pattern, but it's that threading, once you start thinking in threads, it's like a whole other dimension of understanding. I don't know.
I
Understand.
also learned about as recently.
Oh yeah.
That was pretty
Oh
interesting.
yeah, that's a great
yeah.
one too. Yeah, so should we start with like just kind of walking through the basics, right? Like so yeah, we have the couple different threading macros. We have this one which we call thread first. And then we have this one which is called thread last. And then we have a couple special ones like as thread or const thread.
That's a phase too.
Yeah, kind of spin off, you know, and I guess there are thread last versions of these too, right? Well, not of the S probably. That wouldn't make sense.
Some is an important one as well.
Some thread, exactly. Yeah, that's the other one. I think we have the whole set with that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so and as someone said, it's really just syntax, right? So like here, basically the point of them is like if you have an expression like this.
Hey Arne, can I request just for readability if we change that the anonymous function, the
this one
pound side, yeah, let's change that to a just for
function literal.
Yeah, function literal. That's what I'm sorry to interrupt, but I feel like that'd be easier to read if.
Okay. Yeah, and so you already see like I'm kind of struggling to like find like how I want to lay this out, like where I want to put my line breaks, because it kind of like, you know, like if you like, I mean, and the code itself is very, very, you know, like just kind of making some random stuff up, right? So like I have a range of numbers just to have some kind of sequence as an input, and then I'm mapping over that, and then I'm filtering over that, and maybe I want to remove, you know, a specific thing. And so it starts becoming this like deeply nested thing that you kind of have to read backwards, right? Like it starts here, and then you map over it, and then you filter it, and then, you know, you do the remove. And so what threading does is basically saying, you know, and like then I have to like start here, I guess, say like, well, you know, actually you can take that range 20. Oh, what am I doing now? And put it as the last argument in the next form. So this here is going to mean that this range 20 is going to, like, we have this map expression here. It's basically just going to insert it there. And then if I have another filter here, I'll lift this out. All right, like another. And then it's gonna, you know, take whatever it comes up with after it's inserted this range 20 here, and it's gonna stick that here. Here. Right, so if I could do this manually, right? I could say like, okay, well, it's basically gonna take this range 20 and stick it here, and then it's gonna take like, now this is the first thing in my thread, and then I take that and stick that here, and now we're kind of back to the original form.
And it hits you in the face that this is actually a macro. It's probably about the only way to pull this off.
Yeah, it's really just manipulating the forms. It doesn't really care about what's in there, which means that you can do like really weird things with it. Like you can put like lets and fns and stuff in there, and like it's gonna look weird, and you know, but the Clojure doesn't care. It really just does this like very mechanical transformation, and that's the code you end up with. So with thread first.
Well, I want to before we keep move on, I want to check in with Christiana and see like how this explanation is landing.
Yep, that makes perfect sense.
Cool.
Hey,
okay.
Arne, do you also want to do like a before after with macro expand?
Oh, I could, yeah. So yeah, that's always nice if you're trying stuff out with macros in a REPL. Make sure you put a little single quote here, so this doesn't get evaluated, and then pass it on to macro expand, and then we should get. Yeah, now it has those placeholders in there. the original form again.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it.
And so that's thread last, whereas like thread first is, what's a good example with thread first? Let's say you take a number and then you say +5 divide by 7. And now it's gonna, instead of putting the placeholder here, inserting the form like at the end, it's gonna put it right after the first thing in the expression here. So normally you have some kind of function here, and then it's gonna put it right after.
Try inserting it into a string so that you'll see it.
Yeah. Well, you mean something like this? Oh, what's up?
So open paren string, and then, is the number.
String.
No. At the end, where you've got at the end of the thread.
Oh, yeah.
Open
Okay.
paren string.
That's a great idea.
And then
yeah.
just in quotes, is the number.
Is the result? Yeah, is the number.
Or result. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me take these out.
I want to remind everyone that you can hire Arne to be a REPL for you.
REPL as a service, ROS.
So that number was inserted before the is the number characters.
Yeah, so that ended up here.
Yeah. So I want to check with Christiana again. So right now we're looking at the difference between the thread last macro and the thread first macro, and I'm wondering if the difference between the two of them, if we've explained it okay, or you'd like a little bit more explanation around how they differ. Why would you use one versus the other?
No, I think I understand. In examples where we want to use them at the same time, I learned that we should use as with a special character. Do we need parentheses for all the functions? Because I've seen some examples.
No,
Yeah.
if a function doesn't, if it only takes a single argument, it will automatically apply parentheses for you.
So these
So
two are the
those two
same
ones-
thing. If
Oh, it
there's,
doesn't make a
nothing
difference.
else, basically, if you have nothing else in here, you can take out the parentheses.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. So what I think is interesting though about these two, you can stop there and just say like, oh, you can use either, whichever suits you best. But actually, Clojure's APIs are really designed in a way that sometimes the thread first makes a lot of sense and sometimes the thread last makes a lot of sense. And I've already tried to demonstrate this a little bit here, all the sequence operations that Clojure has, map, filter, keep, remove, reduce into, they all take the collection as the last argument. And so when I see a thread last, my mind immediately goes to, oh, this is doing sequential operations over sequences, over collections. Whereas everything that's more sort of doing a single thing to a single kind of object in a, whatever it is, a string or a number or some other thing, an atom, that the thing which you do something to always comes first. And so then, when I see a thread first, I expect that this to be some kind of thing which sort of gets updated step by step, but in the end, it's still kind of a similar thing, just like an updated version of it.
Maps will often appear in the single thread.
Yeah.
So you can do assoc, dissoc in a.
I remembered what I had misunderstood earlier on, and maybe it's a common mistake that newbies make. Is when I look at the thread first thing there with 5 going into ink and you add it down the line, my mind was like, oh, you're just taking this thing and passing it into a function, and then the output of that goes to the next function. So then the mistake I would make is after that ink, I would say, oh, what if I wanted to square the result of that? And I would take that anonymous square function and I'd shove it in there right after the ink. I would do fn of x times xx. I don't know if you could take that. That's the mistake that I would often make until I understood. Ooh, so yeah, go ahead and put that there. And that's where my mind was going wrong. I'm like, oh, I'm just taking 5, I'm incrementing it, and then I'm squaring it, right? And I'm thinking like, oh,
yeah.
I think I was getting confused with comp in my mind or something like that. You know, I was like composing these functions together and like, yeah, that thing will derail. And you'll be like, what did that do? And it's like, I was expecting it to do something that it's like, it's just a macro. It's just syntax. It's not really doing anything. Yeah, go ahead and macro and expand that one. And you'll get some.
Yeah, it doesn't like it because the FN, doesn't.
Oh, it won't even compile. Okay. I'm surprised. I thought it would have.
Yeah, at least syntactically, you should be able
to put it in before
right?
the FN. It would have macro expanded if you had the double arrow.
Yeah, but I kind of want to like show this that like the result would be this, right? And that's why it doesn't work. That's why it doesn't make sense.
And I was like, oh, yeah.
So when we talk about like it's just
the trick there, of course, is double parentheses.
That yeah, exactly. So if we go,
which was very non-intuitive until I figured out what I was looking at.
Oh yeah, that's the workaround for this.
Yeah.
That is yes.
And that works because it puts it as the first argument to the whole thing to the whole function definition in parentheses. So yeah.
And now macro expand will work after the double parentheses. Then it'll make it very obvious what's happening.
Yeah.
Christiana, how are you? How's this?
This is a perfect example, actually.
Great.
Also, one thing that I just learned is the fact that when you update a dictionary, you cannot use like separate update calls, but you need to either do a let block and assign it to a new map, or you can use threading macro. That was also interesting.
Because you're not actually changing the real dictionary. I think that's what you're getting at. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
You're not really changing anything. Yeah.
So you're like,
okay, associate something onto it. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, and then you're looking at associate something else, and you're like, what's wrong with this? Why is it not working?
Right.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, because this creates a value which then just gets discarded, right? You can kind of see it if you wrap this in a vector. You see that it just does them next to each other instead of sort of applying them both. So yeah, exactly. Like the solution would be.
Yeah, Christiana, you're right. I would reach for like just a let block that keeps adding them, and then I finally realized, oh, I could just do this with a threading macro. Yeah.
I did the same thing.
And get rid of all the locals that you're coming up with to try to name each thing, and just get rid of them. Yeah.
Well, I use the apostrophe like a prime in math, so I'd have X and then X dash,
X prime,
dash dash.
Yeah. And then I'm like, why am I giving these things names?
Yeah.
You could just.
Well, I mean, sometimes that's useful.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, names are good.
Yeah.
But they're also
while debugging.
But then the thing that I was really surprised is the fact that I did the exact same thing as you were doing right now in the beginning. Like I added this new name for the map, and then later on when I updated it again for another condition, then the dictionary actually had the values that I needed, and I was surprised. Like I'm assigning this to a new map. How come my map already has this updated values?
I'm not sure about
trying to understand that one. Yeah.
It is easy, and we're seeing it just here where
so I had the condition
X prime was came from X, and then X prime was coming from X and not from X prime.
Oh yeah.
So it lost the value there. Sometimes you can also do the other way around, where you put X in where you meant to give it to the next variable, and you accidentally end up rewriting what the value of X is. So you shadow itself.
Is that what you're referring to, Christiana? Or
so this worked for me, and then after this I tried a threading macro, which I thought was easier because I was confused since I was using this map later on in the function for another condition. I was a little bit concerned about I'm creating this new map, but what's happening with the other condition that I'm modifying my actual map?
Unless you have
getting the updated values.
Unless it's a mutable object, I would suggest maybe that your let block had redefined X once more.
Yeah, so that's possible, right? That like this all just you use the same name, and depending on where you check it, it's going to have a different value.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've done that, and like I've mistakenly used an old name when I should have had a new name, or referred to an older name when I should have referred to the updated thing. Or that's the problem with this approach, is that when you've got shadowing, you can use the thing that you can end up changing something you thought was unchanged. Or if you're using new names, you might accidentally refer to an older thing rather than the newer one that you've created. It can be bug prone writing with let blocks that pick up new values like this and either shadow like we're seeing here, or just renaming things, you can end up accidentally using the wrong name.
True.
Yeah. This is also like a great example to, this is a great example to disambiguate assignment from binding. Because if you had assignment, then you'd probably get updates, but these are bindings that are happening. So it's kind
how
of
do you do
subtle.
like what functions are you referring to?
Oh, I'm not referring to functions. I'm referring to the fact of X goes to empty map is what we call a binding, and it's not an assignment. There's no mutation happening here.
Yeah, an assignment would be if we would change these to defs, right?
Okay, yeah. And it actually is mutating things along the way.
Yeah. Or like, just in some other imperative language, if you just have x equals 1, x equals x plus 1, those would be assignments. Yeah, so I think the general idea here is that these threading macros, the threading macros themselves don't actually perform any operations. They just, when we talk about like that, they change the syntax of your code, what we're talking about is they actually just kind of rewrite your code. Yeah, like rearrange it a bit before it gets evaluated. And that, I don't know, that's like a whole different subject of like how macros work, like macro expansion time versus compile time. But I want to do a little check-in because we have about 15 minutes left. And
sorry, Daniel, could I just on the current topic where you might use let for debugging? I asked this question on the Clojure Slack the other day, and someone suggested using do-to in your thread. You could just add in a do-to call in your thread as opposed
to well, before we get to the do-to, the reason that this do-to comes up is that people want to know, like I have a threading macro with a bunch of things here, and I want to see what the result is here before the other stuff happens. And that works up to a point because it actually will have printed this, but then we get an error.
Double parens.
Well, I think
I don't think the double parens.
Oh no, that'll print, but then pass along and a nil.
I don't think it returns the value. That's the problem,
yeah,
right?
that's the
exactly.
thing, that print line and all the print functions return nil. And so once we get here, we're basically threading nil. And so that's where the do-to comes in. This is a little trick. It's again kind of a syntax trick. If you put a do-to here, using do-to, like if I say, do-to 5 print line, this is equivalent to saying let's say x equals 5, print line x, and then return x. Like that's what do-to does. So like it does some things with this value. It's in a way it's also a thread first. It puts this as the first argument to one or more functions, and same thing, I can put the actual invocation with parentheses, or if there's no extra arguments, I can leave off the parentheses. But the thing is that in the end, it returns exactly what you gave it. Kind of ignores all these intermediate return values. And so here, this map is going to get inserted here where the placeholder goes, and then, you know, that get printed, but then the threading continues with the value.
For a long time, I actually used double parens and then a function, an anonymous function, which did the println and explicitly returned its argument.
Yeah, that's
doto is quicker.
Can do something like this, like do print line percentage. Which I don't know which one is like needs more explanation to like, because I feel like this
I had
one
an
is maybe,
fnx,
yeah,
println x,
or, yeah,
and then return x.
yeah, that's maybe also a little more clear.
Yeah, so I think that, yeah, the key insight here is just like, it's just the threading macros, they're just reorganizing your code. Same with as. Cond and some are a little bit more interesting, but maybe we can cover those like in a future episode. What do y'all think? Should we move on to the next question?
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Christiana.
It was a good one. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to explain this. It was really helpful.
Great. Cool. All right. So let's see here. So a couple other questions that we got. Moving from an object-oriented language to a more functional perspective. I think there's, so Sunny had that question. There was a specific question there around like dealing with configuration and settings. But then also, there was the question of how to get into reps that Steph had. So what say you, counselors?
If I can jump in real quick, I can come back next time and present some actual code to give a little bit more of a concrete question. Because I'm also interested in Steph's question. So if we could go to that, that would be fine with me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Great.
Yeah. All right,
Thank
Steph, pinning you again, putting you on the hot
How do you
seat.
get into your reps?
Yeah. All right,
Yeah,
counselors.
I'd just like to learn a little bit more. You know, how you improve continually. I feel like if you're going to be doing functional programming, there's a lot to be learned, and so, you know, being productive in how you learn. I mean, I'd like to save some time out of my life by learning from you.
So I have a couple of examples. So Clojure Coens is a website that is, you know, super awesome. Yeah, I think actually Michelle had mentioned it. Did she mention? I think that was maybe her pick a couple weeks ago. But I will take this opportunity to announce special early edition leak that soon there will be a book where you can get in your Clojure reps with brain teasers called Clojure Brain Teasers, authored by Alex Miller and Jordan Miller. No relation. And yeah, this is super, we haven't like officially publicly announced it yet, but we like, you know, the contracts are signed and we're working on it. So in December, but so by June, so in a year we will have a brain teaser book for exactly this issue of just wanting some teasers and wanting something fun to give you some insight to the language. And yeah, when we were looking, we're like, okay, what's our competition here? Clojure Coens was the thing that we had to tell the publisher, like the other competition. So that's the official answer.
Nice.
I always enjoyed foreclosure. It was foreclosed, and then it's been revitalized as Forever Clojure. I put the link.
Yeah, and we have the person here who did that actually.
On cue, he just joined. It's as if he was being called.
So Mitesh, who just joined in, has put out the forever closure so that people can continue doing their foreclosure exercises.
That's how I learned this language. That's how I did my reps. I went through the whole dang thing over a period of a month or two.
There's good stuff in there.
I like it because there's some of them which are just a single expression, or a very terse description. And then you get to another one where you can solve it, but it took you a page. And because everything else is so terse, it makes me rethink, like, what was a better way? What am I missing here that could be a more expressive solution for this? Something more elegant. And sometimes maybe there isn't, but it makes me revisit and go over whenever I come across these ones which seem a little unwieldy, and search for something more elegant. And I think that helps my general coding.
You will know this language if you do all of them. There's no way around it. You will know it.
Yeah.
So from, oh, go ahead, Daniel.
I was gonna say, like, so for me, like, I have kind of like an obsessive approach to like how to do this kind of stuff. But so one of the things I try to do is to like break it down into like what are the different domains actually of learning a programming language, right? So it's not just the language itself, right? But it's also like your environment, and then also building and deploying an actual production thing. And so for me, it just really helps to get clear to identify what exactly, like which specific thing, which part of like being able to use this language I'm trying to learn at some some moment, right? And then so from there, it's like like what I might do is try to write out a little bit of almost a curriculum for myself to figure out like what are the subjects, what are the topics to learn. So like when it comes to the language, you know, there's, you know, one way to approach it would be like, okay, how do I do this something from an object-oriented language? How do I do this in Clojure? You could start there, and then you might start like forming more questions around like, okay, what are protocols and records and things like that. But for me, it's like the more I can actually like build out a curriculum to say like, okay, here's a specific topic to look at, then it helps me like kind of feel like I'm making progress and not just kind of like, you know, jumping from one thing to another in a kind of haze of wanting to learn. Another thing that I like to do is just actually come up with like little projects for myself. So I do a lot of like web app development, but so like early on, I came up with like really silly like web app ideas. Like one of them was like to put in like 2 zip codes and it would get the weather forecast for because I moved from like Massachusetts to North Carolina, and like the weather in North Carolina is like way nicer. So I could like basically troll my mother-in-law to be like, here are the 2 forecasts. Like, look how much warmer it is here, you know? But so that's like another approach that you can take. I guess one, oh my God, I love this subject, and I feel like I talk about it a lot because like how we learn is so fascinating and interesting, and how to do it effectively, right? But gosh, I just have a little bit of a brain fart there. Well, anyway, I'll try to remember what I was going to say, but relinquish the floor to, I think, Mike.
I just wanted to
or
quickly
Arne.
riff off what
Yeah.
Daniel was saying. Like, oh, sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead, Aditya.
Yeah, so I haven't written a lot of Clojure in the last maybe a year or a couple of years, but the way I look at it, generally like functional programming, the way I look at it is it's a collection of ideas, and those ideas are available automatically to varying extents in different programming languages. And so basically you should see my shell scripts because they're all like purely functional pipelines. All right. So because I mean, that's from where I stand, that's like the OG functional, like data oriented, like totally streaming architecture in the small. And like I've personally sort of gained a lot of leverage using those ideas. Like, for example, how much of a domain can I extract into a data representation? And then can I construct a pipeline and punch it through that data representation or not? And that sort of, it scales from like, 50 lines of code to across systems as well. And like that sort of like, so there's one dimension to, I mean, just coding practice, and the other dimension is design practice. And the design practice comes like, for me, by trying to use these concepts and like read these concepts, understand these concepts, and try to apply them in various situations, which may or may not just be a programming context. It may be a system design context. It may be an architecture context. It may even be like team communications, because ultimately, like many of these things are highly overlapping concepts. So so yeah, so it's it it use it, find a hammer and use it everywhere. That's my method.
Okay. Yeah.
And see what breaks and what doesn't.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well, I remember the thing I was going to mention, which was that like the other thing is that this is like it really is a vast space, and like for me, part of it is just like getting comfortable with like, oh, okay, like this is like there will always be like more stuff to learn. Like, yeah, I mean, I still feel that way for sure. And I want to throw out too, like as an example app, if you're interested, I've had this question for a long time. Well, like, or not an app, but like a project. I've had this question for a long time. Does every strip mall in America have a Taekwondo studio? Like, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but I think it'd be fun to use Clojure to figure that out. Sorry, Arne, I cut you off.
Yeah, so the way I get my reps in is really just like starting, little toy projects. And so I have a GitHub like directory where I check out, everything that's on GitHub, but I also have like a CLJ projects folder where I just have, all kinds of random stuff. And I just looked at it, has like over 120 different, like things in there. Because like if I I come across a library or two and I'm like, oh, I'd like to play around with that, then I'll set up a, just create a new empty deps Eden and an empty source folder and go from there. Or sometimes I'll, a couple months ago I was playing around with what are they called, this open source Firebase alternative, and then I was really sort of trying to build more of an app kind of thing, also experimenting with some architecture, and a lot of these I abandon, but it's still really great practice. And sometimes I'll revisit them, like months later, or sometimes like months later I'll be on a a client project or something, and I'll be like, oh, didn't I do something like this, like this one weekend where I was bored, like, and then I'll go ruffle through that code. So yeah, for me, it's really like, so like, like, I guess it's sort of almost the opposite of what Daniel was saying. Like I said, like, I'm not systematic about it at all. I really just kind of follow my nose, because the thing is, like, these things that I do outside of my, like, client work hours, I really have to find stuff that keeps me motivated. And so I find these, these libraries, these projects, these patterns, these things that I really want to play around with. And yeah, then it's like very easy to spend a couple more evenings, toying around with stuff.
I want to just rip off of comment on what you said, Arne, and that's kind of part of like learning how to learn, which I guess I'll just mash this together with my pick. That I think it's really important to like take some time to discover yourself and discover what motivates you, because this answer is going to be different for each person. Like Daniel said, that like, being very systematic worked really well for him, versus I'm more like Arne, where like I find a problem that needs to be solved and obsessively try to solve it in the way that I'm trying to learn. Like, oh, I need to make a playlist. Let's do it with an API. Like just like really, dive into it. But that's it's different for everything. And also, so I learned that I'm very socially motivated. Like I like to work with people. Surprise. And so, indoctrinating myself with like friends and other people that do the language, so we can colloquially even talk about like making jokes. Like my last partner also did Clojure, and it was just always around all of the time. I just like so deeply, and Wendy, you probably can relate to this a little bit with Robert. It just being able to like, not even necessarily like, yeah, getting your code reps in is one thing, but also just like having it just into your life, like where, making memes is something that's stupid, but fun, but it's it's a way that motivates me to think about learning and think about things in very Clojure style. So
this is a good time to announce that the Clouncil is starting a DAO for Clojure Island. Totally legit. So yeah, sorry, distributed whatever organization, NFT,
autonomous
Bitcoin. Yeah. Okay.
Wait, we are?
Blockchain joke. No, I'm just kidding.
What is it? What is it?
You're gonna put out a Lambda coin, Daniel?
Yeah, Lambda coin. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Clouncil
not
tokens.
DAO.
Yeah.
I only know the DAO, the way.
Yeah. I was like, is this the Tao? Like, I have a motorcycle somewhere. Like,
the way that can be set is not the eternal way.
Steph, does that help answer your question?
It does very much. Thanks. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks for the question. Cool. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our 6th Clouncil session. Ooh. And almost to the end. To get us actually to the end, we're gonna do some picks. So pick away. How about Jordan? Want to start us off with the picks?
I did my pick. You did my pick.
I really wonder what your pick is today, again. Jordan. I'm so curious.
Okay, Barbara Oakley. Well, as mentioned, so it's this book, Learning How to Learn. That's how I consume the material. It also has a Coursera course that goes with it, and it's about it's learning how to learn, like how, if you flunked math and science, how to learn them, or something like that. And yeah, it's just about, it's just good stuff. It's good stuff. And learning about yourself, learning about focus mode and diffuse mode. And no, you cannot just like take 20 Adderall, study for a month straight and be a genius. That's like not how it works at all. Don't do that. Just like drink some water, take a walk, and you'll learn it way better. So yeah, that's my pick. I'll pass it to Arne.
My pick today, and I'm really excited to announce this one, is Caves of Cud. Has anyone here heard of Caves of Cud?
No, heard of it.
Put it in the chat. So it's QUD. Yeah, Daniel already beat me to it. Caves of Cud. So it's an indie game. It's a roguelike, which is this genre that like started with just like terminal games basically, or like dial in, but it's a amazing take on it. It's all like the whole world is procedurally generated. Your character can you start, you have to build a character. There's some pre-built characters, or you can like pick your own character. You can be a true kin, then you have access to cybernetic implants, or you can be a mutant, and you have access to all these mutations, like extra limbs, or like fire spitting, or and then you go into the world and you do these quests, you find items, you tinker stuff, there's all these different factions. You can like now the crabs despise you because you killed their leader. Now whenever you encounter a crab, they will attack you. But then if you like slay their enemies, then your reputation with crabs goes up, and then maybe they will no longer attack you. It's like all these systems that kind of combine. There's these different liquid systems. You collect like, actually the currency in the game is fresh water, so like you can only carry so much of it because it weighs a lot. Anyway, there's a lot to it. It's a really fun game. It's a little like dense to get started with, but there's some YouTube explanations. Yeah, I love it. Can only recommend it.
Very cool.
That's my pick. And next up is Mike.
Okay, mine is kind of a general one. I was talking to Jordan recently, and I realized I had paid $80 for a serial program for my computer, just a terminal kind of program. So I would recommend, if you use tools daily, pay for one of them. And it's actually, so the one that I use all the time is called Git-tower, because we all use Git, right, these days. So pick something like that. And other ones are like Kaleidoscope for doing diffing. And these tools are really good. Git-tower is the one that I use most of the time, and I can justify the expense for it. And it's like treat yourself to something like that. I think that's probably like 80 or $100 and you're like, what, how can you spend that much money on a tool? Like, yeah, you're doing this day to day and you're software developers, you could do it, you know, pay for something like that and treat yourself. With that, I will transfer it to Paula. She's still on. Yeah, Paula.
Yeah, I'm still on. I had a couple of thoughts, but during this this issue of Clouncil, it reminded me of Rich Hickey's hammock-driven development, and I would recommend that people, especially beginning, if you're going through something like foreclosure or forever closure now, to take the time to get away from your REPL, to think your problem through, and to do it in a way where there's no other stimulus, not listening to music, not reading a book, or watching television, but going for a walk or lying in a hammock or something, or in the shower, something where you can focus on that problem. See if you can solve it in your head and get your head around that. And that deep thinking really does start to pay off when you make a habit of it. It helps in design. It helps with debugging. It helps with every stage of developing in Clojure. And, you know, oftentimes people, if I talk about how much I enjoy going with Clojure, I've had people come back and say, oh, and you forgot to thank the REPL. Well, I know most people really do focus on the REPL and it is useful. I don't. I do use a REPL occasionally, but I don't focus on it. I spend a lot of time looking at code and getting away and thinking about code, and I'll write very big blocks. And then I might pull out little bits just to make sure that I syntactically got things right or that the data flowed through it the way I expected. But I really think through large portions of code in my free time away from a computer. And I find that I'm far more productive and able to write more complex integrated things this way. And this is, you know, a skill that I've only been able to develop through practice. And so when Rich talked about doing exactly this in the hammock, it really resonated for me. I think he's better at it than I am, but it's I think it's a really, really important skill. So rather than just constantly, I do this, what do I get back? I should do something and know what I'm going to get back. And I use a REPL just to confirm this. So my pick is to take that time and put real thought into initially simple things, and over time you'll develop the taste for thinking through bigger and bigger issues. And is that all of us now? I think it is.
It leaves me.
Daniel.
Yeah. So I've been watching this show on Netflix called Giri Haji. It's so much fun. It's just like this. Yeah. It's like there's a murder that happens in London that involves someone who is like who had been in the Yakuza, as you know, Yanks say it. And so like it's this like kind of Tokyo, London like crossover thing going on, like involves crime and murder and love. Super fun, well-written show. And that's my pick. And that's it for the 6th episode of the Clouncil. I had a great time today. I really appreciate everyone participating. It was really great to get the questions from y'all in the audience and work through it with you. And we're not going to be here in 2 weeks because a lot of us actually are going to be in Berlin for Clojure D. And I think some of us are going to be actually flying back on the day that the next Clouncil is scheduled. So we're going to be missing one session, but we'll be picking it back up a couple weeks after that on June 29th, I believe. So we're looking forward to seeing you all again then. And thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.